Welcome, everyone, to this webinar brought to you by the Israel Defense and Security Forum, IDSF. In Hebrew, our name is Habitchonistim. IDSF is a movement of reserve officers and operators from all branches of the Israel Defense Establishment who believe that strong national security priorities and staunch Zionism are necessary for Israel to be the eternal homeland of the Jewish people. Thank you to all of our viewers and all of our supporters who have been tuning in every day to these war briefings. It's very important to us at IDSF that you have the opportunity to hear directly from the source, experts on the ground who really have a feeling for what is going on here in Israel and can bring you their opinions, their analysis in these very candid briefings. We are joined today by Brigadier General Amir Avivi and Or Yisachar, the head of the IDSF Research Department. General, we'll start with you. What can you please share us today about the war?
Yes, so we had a difficult day with 11 soldiers killed, mostly from the Givati Brigade in the area of Jibalia. The ground forces are fully engaged inside Gaza, closing on the city. Fierce fighting, very fierce fighting on the streets. In any encounter our soldiers have, they are victorious. We're managing to really destroy the terrorists, the infrastructure, the tunnels. You have to understand, 11 soldiers, it's terrible, but at the end of the day, it's one APC that got shot with an anti-tank missile from the back, probably terrorists that emerged from a tunnel. It happens, this is war. But this is like one event that killed many soldiers because there were explosives inside the APC. But looking at the overall operation, we're destroying them. And our forces are advancing and are closing on the Gaza city. And the army is doing very well with the Air Force, with the Navy, with the artillery, with the ground forces, maneuvering. We're not taking any chances. We're destroying infrastructures, hitting terrorists, and moving forward. While doing that, the army is taking in consideration also the fact that there are hostages. And of course, while we are maneuvering and conquering the area, we're doing everything possible to find the hostages and liberate them. As we are going in, the whole proxies in Iran are getting more and more nervous, and we are seeing shooting. We had 2 incidents of missiles with 400 kilograms of explosives shot from Yemen on Israel. In the first event, it was the first time Arrow 3 was used operationally. Arrow 3 destroys missiles like that in space. Arrow 3 is like a spaceship, and it engages in space, and it destroyed the missile, the ground missile that was shot from Yemen. Afterwards, there was another incident in the area of Eilat. So we are looking at what's going on in the Red Sea. The army sent some Navy ships to this area of the Red Sea. And we have all these issues now with Yemen, with the Houthis. Lebanon, Nasrallah is going to give a speech on Friday. I think we'll know pretty soon where this is going and if Lebanon is joining the war fully or continuing to shoot along the border. Today they shot mortars, they're trying to shoot anti-tank missiles. We have forces also in Syria, in the south of Syria. And things are complicated, but the main mission is moving forward. We are on the first step of conquering Gaza. We are focused on the northern part of Gaza, on the really heart of Hamas, the Gaza city. We are surrounding the Gaza city with our forces. moving forward, doing what needs to be done. And we'll have to follow up and see where this is going. At the same time, inside Israel, all the municipalities, all the cities are organizing the squads and the companies and organizing the towns and cities, securing them for a possible maybe development of uprising or something with the Israeli Arabs. In Judea and Samaria, we are constantly attacking and apprehending terrorists, and they are mostly on the run. We don't see at the moment in the Palestinian Authority anything dramatic. We are on the offensive and they are hiding. I think that for the people of Israel, you know, seeing soldiers killed is hard. It's very hard. We cry for every single soldier that we lose. But I think the people are very, very determined, very resolute. We all understand what is going on and what needs to be done, and that this is, for us, an existential war. It's not that we are in an existential threat, but we need to win decisively this war. I think that the government is trying, while we are doing our job, to really engage with the leaders of the world. The Prime Minister is talking constantly to President Biden and to Macron and Britain and Germany, Italy, to really keep everybody on our side. And I think we are managing till now to do it very well. There was one demand which the Israelis don't like, to bring humanitarian aid to the civilians in Gaza that are concentrated in the south of Gaza. Israelis don't like that because everybody is saying we shouldn't give them anything if they don't give the hostages. But there is a lot of international pressure, and at the end of the day, we understood that if we want to have the support we need to really destroy Hamas and all these terror organizations, this is something we'll have to agree to. We're not letting them bring fuel, but medicine, food, water in the south they are getting. We're not encountering many civilians in the war in Gaza, in the north. The ones who were there are fleeing. There are endless amount of tunnels connected to all the houses in Gaza. So we have to tear apart most of the houses because we want to make sure that there are no terrorists that are going to emerge from the tunnels. So there is a lot of destruction to really enable to secure our soldiers as they are maneuvering to the places they need to go. Yeah, I think this is the main things. Moshe, let's do Or's briefing and then questions.
Thank you, General Avivi. We're going to go now to Or Yisachar, who is no stranger to our war briefings, or is the head of our research department, and is going to speak to the involvement of Yemen and the Houthis in this war. Or, please.
Thank you, Moshe. Well, hello, everybody. Good to see you. Shalom. Just got to tell you, I'm right here in Jerusalem, and it's such a great thing to drive around the streets of the city and see reservists all around the country, in all ages and all backgrounds, religious, secular. I gotta tell you, as an Israeli, there's nothing, there's nothing better to see people in uniform. I gotta tell you, it really brings there's a really good feeling seeing that. Just before our and what Amir mentioned, the missiles shot there, but toward Israel and even the attack drones. But I just want to be, very quickly, because we all know that this is not just one front. We also have Judea and Samaria, right? The West Bank, some people call it. The IDF, just realize how lucky that we are that we have the IDF in Judea and Samaria, and how lucky we are we didn't pull out of Judea and Samaria. the same way we did in Gaza. So the IDF arrested over 1,100 terrorists, most of them from Hamas, since the beginning of the war, just in the past 3 weeks, right? Over 1,100 terrorists, and killed over 100. Now, these are all terrorists who are ticking time bombs, some specifically planning to do copycat attacks of the October 7 attacks in Gaza, doing the same thing in Judea and Samaria, toward Ra'anana, toward Kfar Saba, toward Afula, toward Tel Aviv, toward Jerusalem. And we're very lucky to have them arrested or eliminated. I did see a Belgian minister of development, who said that since the beginning of the war, settlers murdered 95 Palestinians, 95 innocent Palestinians, including 20 children. Now, this is a blood libel. Okay, this is exactly why we say anti-Semitism is never dependent on facts, always dependent on the blood libels and the stigmas. No settler ever killed 95 Palestinians. This is a fiction, and the fact that the minister in the Belgian government says it, that is extremely grave. You see how these phenomena are so common, unfortunately, not distinguishing between killing Hamas terrorists and the fictions that they have, the presuppositions, I guess, that they have. So we really need to be careful with these blood libels. This is really anti-Semitism, pure and simple. I don't have any better way to describe it. But today's topic is Yemen. And let me just share, if I could, please, the map, right? Moshe, please let me share my screen, if that's okay. Make host. All right.
Okay, you should be able to right now.
Fantastic. So this is Israel, as you can see, right? There's a typo here in Google Maps. It says West Bank. They probably mean Judea and Samaria. Israel's war against Gaza, I never considered it to be an Israel-Gaza war, but rather a regional war. Okay, and we gotta understand this. This is not just Hamas here. This is Hamas backed by Iran. And who else is backed by Iran? Our Hezbollah over here. I don't know if you can see my precursor, my mouse, but Hezbollah over here in Lebanon, okay, over here. And we got Hamas, of course, here in the Gaza Strip, over here, backed by Iran. And we got Yemen, of all places. Now, just before, because as you all know, there is a civil war going on in Yemen, and just going to give you the highlight. But I don't know if you know the name Ansar al-Awlaki, Anwar al-Awlaki. I'm sorry, Anwar al-Awlaki. I don't know if anyone knows the name. Well, in 2011, he became the first American citizen ever to be eliminated by a drone strike during the Obama administration. He actually was a senior official in the Al-Qaeda in the Arab Peninsula. And Awlaki was eliminated by a drone strike, first time ever. But this really marked the shift in the awareness of the U.S. government to terrorism in the region, especially around Yemen. You all about the Arab Spring, what became really a dark Islamic winter. But then it all, it started in Tunisia and in Egypt and Syria and all these and other Arab countries. But it also trickled down to Yemen. And in Yemen, I don't know to what extent this whole conflict is clear to many of us, but there is a minority called the Houthis in Yemen. They're Shiite, but they are a branch of Shiite called the Zaydis. They're almost as Shiite as Iranian. We all know Iran is the only country in the world with a Shiite majority, right? The rift between Shiite and Sunni in Islam. And ever since 2014, there is a civil war in Yemen, and the UN described it as the worst humanitarian disaster in the world right now, in the world. Just to give you the numbers, because Israel is criticized for killing 100 Hamas terrorists, right? We had nearly 400,000 people, 400,000 people killed in this war, mostly indirectly, by the way, by famine and by malnutrition, by poor health services, many of them children. Many of them children. You had families who had maybe, one dish per day for the entire family. So this is really catastrophic. And ever since 2014, this Houthi minority in the north, backed by Iran, has decided that the opportune moment has come, and invaded Sana'a, the capital, where he holds until this day, and really took over large swaths of the country. Saudi Arabia saw it, didn't like it. Then in 2015, it led a coalition against the Houthis, and it got a lot of backlash from the international community for not only airstrikes, and Saudi Arabia led an international coalition with the UAE, with Egypt, with Jordan, with Sudan, and with the United States assistance, of course, to eliminate the Houthis in Yemen. Not extremely successful, but still it managed to somehow mitigate the threat. We do see, for example, case by case, the same Iranian patterns in Yemen all over again, which is an Iranian-backed militia like the Houthis taking over an area, starts firing rockets, starts terrorizing a population, and then blames it all on those who counterattack, right? So this is exactly what's going on here. We have an Iranian-backed militia firing rockets at Saudi Arabia, and of course, taking hold in Yemen, and leading to the death of tens of thousands. And the international community doesn't blame the Houthis, it blames Saudi Arabia and other countries who counterattacked. Now, the Yemenite president was ever since assassinated, the other president resigned, and now there is a council in the city of Aden that is somehow managing the situation, and there are currently negotiations between the parties, the Yemenite government and the Sana'a Houthi government, but we all know that these are all fragile times. And the Houthi government in Sana'a decided to go after Israel, much like Hezbollah and Hamas go after Israel, the other Iranian proxies, right? But no one expected Yemen to be involved. But actually, Yemen was involved back in 2021 when it tried to fire attack drones in Israel during the Guardian of the Walls operation. And it failed, it was intercepted, and now they uptick their gamble, right? So the USS Carney, for example, this aircraft carrier right here in the Red Sea, just last week, intercepted at least three drones and several cruise missiles on their way from Yemen to Israel, to Eilat, to Jerusalem, to Tel Aviv. And for the first time in history, Saudi Arabia intercepted one of these missiles. Unbelievable. Saudi Arabia intercepting missiles targeted by Iranian militias, the Houthis, into Israel. So, talk to me about normalization. So, the more victorious we are in Gaza and against terrorism, the higher the chances, the prospects are for peace in the Middle East. And so I just want to give you the background because we just had yet another intercepted missile, like General Avivi described, intercepted by Israel. And then we know that this government is, the Houthis, is not only Islamist and, targeting Israel, and their spokesperson goes out and says, we will attack the Jews and we will attack Israel. Look no further than their logo. This is the logo, not very, not that much of a great graphic design, but this is the logo of the Houthi government. For those of you who don't read Arabic, it says this: Allahu Akbar, right? God is the Almighty. Al-Maut li-America, death to America. Al-Maut li-Israel, death to Israel. Al-Anat al-Yahud, curse on the Jews. Al-Nasr li-Islam, victory to Islam. All right, so Allahu Akbar, death to America, death to Israel, curse on the Jews, and victory to Islam. What sane government puts that on their logo, right? And so the idea is that, they consider the US and Israel as their enemy, both. And now the question, what do we do next? Because the IDF said, just yesterday, we're ready to strike even in Yemen if required. The US is there. I think they're much better, well prepared to strike Yemen together with Saudi Arabia. They have tons of experience in this war. But I think the IDF is prepared for any scenario. Right now, all we need to know is that the situation, now we know that the situation is complicated. We know that the Houthis launch missiles and attack drones on Israel. They attacked the Aramco oil facilities back in Saudi Arabia, if you remember, in 2019. Totally neutralizing half of Saudi Arabia's oil production capability, 2019. So they really are an Iranian wing that threatens the entire region. And now Iran is trying to hide behind them, but they can't hide forever because everybody knows that they stand behind the Houthis from Yemen. this is about it. Let's open it up to questions and see where it goes.
Or if I could ask you, in terms of, so to speak, ranking the threat from the Houthis compared to Hamas and the armaments that Hezbollah has, where do they fall out? They're a bigger threat than Hamas. They're a smaller threat than Hamas.
Right. I gotta tell you, Hamas represents a bigger threat because it's nearby. It's right here on our doorstep. It has all the capabilities it wants to invade Israel and murder 1,400 civilians and soldiers. We can't see the Houthis in Yemen ever getting that far. But they are equipped with the best ground-to-ground missiles and cruise missiles and attack drones that Iran ever has, right? They possess, like General Avivi said, missiles with an explosive head of like 400, 500 kilos. That would be, I'm really bad in pounds, I guess, 1,100 pounds, something like that, like 1,100 pounds, something like that, 1,200 pounds. That's a big explosive, right? Reaching as far as 1,600 miles, 2,000 miles. This is these are big distances, right? The question is, what can Israel do about this threat? I think they are just really well equipped. I don't think Hamas has these capabilities, and they don't need to. It doesn't need to reach as far as 2,000 miles. But the Houthis in Yemen do need it because of their distance from Israel. Hamas, I think, possesses real ideological hold on Palestinians in Israel, in Judea and Samaria, in Gaza, not in the same way that the Houthis do. So I think right now Hamas is a bigger threat, of course.
Okay, and are you able to elaborate on the Saudis' interests in this? Do you think they shot down that missile because potentially it could have diverted to Saudi Arabia, or it was an act of alliance with Israel, and there could be more to come in that sense?
I think both, but bear in mind, when the Saudis intercept a missile, they got several moments to launch, and these are usually automatic procedures, right? It's not like King Salman has decided after a long meeting to intercept the missile. Automatic system once a missile is being fired, and it's intercepted. My guess, my educated guess, is that these are Patriot missiles, American missiles, who are stationed there precisely for that reason, to prevent missiles from ever going to Saudi Arabia. And they did it in the past. They targeted missiles in Saudi Arabia and preventing missiles from coming to Israel. But you mentioned interests. Look at Yemen, allegedly far away. We shouldn't care too much about it. But you see this over here? Bab al-Mandab? There you go. So this is the key, because Iran has big interest in Yemen, because if you take all the supply chain from the Persian Gulf through the Red Sea, it goes right here through this doorstep. It goes up to the Red Sea, onto the Suez Canal, and onto the Mediterranean Sea. So if you control Bab al-Mandab, you control the world supply chain, honestly. You should control the global supply chain. And the Iranians know it, and the Houthis know it. It's precisely the risk here.
Okay, thank you everyone for submitting your questions. There are many, many very technical questions coming in, or I don't necessarily want to bombard you with all of these very technical questions about how the U.S. versus Saudi decides who's going to shoot down the missiles, things of that nature.
Yeah.
Let's see.
By the way, one interesting thing is that the Saudis they did a naval blockade in Yemen. Naval blockade. Nobody in the world called Yemen an enclave, a prison. Nobody in the world, like they do to Gaza. They called Gaza an enclave, the world's largest prison, naval blockade, siege. Nobody ever says it about Yemen. That's because the international community is dishonest, the United Nations is dishonest, and I believe they don't have real interest in human rights. They simply have interest in bashing Israel. Otherwise, they would have applied the same rule elsewhere in much, much, much graver situations than Gaza. Yemen had 400,000 people died there, and a naval blockade, and a Saudi airstrike campaign, killing many, many tens of thousands. So Gaza doesn't even get anywhere near that.
Sure. Okay, maybe if you could speak for a minute about the U.S. involvement in this, not in terms of the technical who's setting up which missiles, but in terms of the U.S. presence here in the Middle East and off the shores of Israel. Are they there to protect us against Hezbollah? Are they there to partner with us against Yemen? Are they there to provide support for Hamas? Where do you think they fit in, really?
Anything that fits in, to be honest. I mean, the U.S. is mainly here, I believe, as a show of force. It can see how U.S. interests are at stake, not just Israeli interests, but also the U.S. interests. And to be honest, I mean, the U.S. looks at the region, it says it's not about Israel and Gaza. It's much, much larger than that. Much larger than that. If Hezbollah is trying to, you know, play with fire and Iran is getting involved, this is world war, and we don't want that. And especially when they know how the Russians and the Chinese are involved in all this. So this is a Russian-Chinese-Iranian axis against an American-Israeli pragmatic Arab axis. And the Americans have this, you know, they have a dog in this fight. They don't want to, they have high stakes in the Middle East. And in that sense, they don't want to lose. And they're absolutely right.
I'm so glad you mentioned that. Are there any very clear indicators that there's a Russian or Chinese handprint, footprint on what's happening now?
Let me tell you, Russia is playing kind of double game here. It always has. Russia's always enjoyed playing with all, you know, sides involved. It's in touch with Iran and with Israel. It's in touch with Syria and with the U.S. So it's a bit of a, you know, they're playing this kind of game. They always have. I remember Gabi Ashkenazi, our former chief of staff of the military, coming to Moscow for advice as his plane was still there when he was about to leave. A plane of Hezbollah members came into Moscow. So they just had Hamas officials last week over in Moscow. So they're playing really dangerous game. I can't tell you that Russia actually equips Hamas and funds Hamas and planned all of this, but they definitely do fund and help Iran, and Iran helps Hamas. So we got a chain there. We got an axis of Russian involvement, and I think they became even more unpredictable and violent since the outbreak of the Ukraine war. Honestly, I don't think that Russia would have, you know, behaved like that before the Ukraine war, before the whole world was sanctioning it and going against it. I think, well, Russia and Iran is for sure close. Putin's only visit outside of Russia and Belarus was to Tehran to see Raisi, the president, right? So, you know, that is really what's going on here. Russia is getting closer to Iran. Yeah.
Let me ask you a final question. It's great to have you with us and pick your brain and hear all of this. Yemen is not making the front page of the news sites. You would think that a sovereign country or a group declares war and everyone has forgot about it. Can you explain?
Yeah.
Is this the media? Is this Yemen? Is it the Houthis? What's going on here?
I tell you something. It's a great thing to see, you know, all the masks being ripped off and everyone just revealing who they really are, who they really side with. And you would think that a disaster like happened in Yemen, I mean, the United Nations call it the worst disaster in the world. You don't have a single Security Council meeting on Yemen now, okay? You have the worst humanitarian disaster. You got cruise missiles, attack drones fired in your neighborhood. You got tens of thousands of children, you know, malnutrition and starving almost to death, really. And did you see anything by the United Nations recently? Did you see any headlines? Did you see any interest by the media? As I told you before about the Saudi operation in Yemen, that I think was justified. Maybe they were much, much more, you know, cumbersome than the Israelis. They killed many, many more civilians. They imposed a naval blockade on Yemen. They targeted 20,000 people. They killed them in airstrikes, right? And the rest of the 400,000 died, you know, of malnutrition and all that, and poor health services. You don't hear any of that. You just hear Gaza, 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 Gaza. And I suspect if people who care about human rights, they care about human rights, not Gazan rights, not Palestinian rights. They care about human rights. So I suspect there is a really well-organized campaign here to make everyone forget about the real threat to global security here. and focus on the Palestinians because it's bad for Israel, because Israel is a inconvenient boxing, you know, and at the end of the day, they have to decide whether they want to slander Israel or they want to actually to be credible, because right now they're not so credible. You know, you got all these conflicts in the world, and all they focus on is Israel. Everything they talk about is Israel in the United Nations Security Council, in the General Assembly. It's pathetic. So really, I don't think, to be honest, I think we should ignore them much more, this body called the United Nations, and then really demand more accountability from our media. You know, it's super, you know, it's sensationalizing all of these, you know, ongoing reports from Gaza and all that. Talk about Yemen too. You know what? Talk about Israeli children. Not just, you know, I see some media outlets, you know, just reporting about the bombardment in Gaza. I understand that's what's going on now. Don't forget about Israeli children. Don't forget about Israeli victims. We just had 1,400 people slaughtered to death for, you know, just 3 weeks ago, just the other day. Talk about that, right? Yeah.
Very well said. Very powerful. Thank you for sharing that. Absolutely. Thank you to all of our viewers, all of our supporters for tuning in and joining this briefing. Thank you to General Avivi for sharing his expertise and his time with us. And of course, to Or Yisachar, the head of the IDSF Research Department. Or I really hope we can call you back in and you'll give more of your expertise and time
Pleasure.
to us. Thank you to all of our viewers. Tomorrow, we are hoping to share with you some personal accounts from people in Kfar Aza. So please join us tomorrow for that. And with that, I wish everyone a good day. Stay strong, stay safe, take care.